I loved the radio business, and I loved popular music. And when I came in here tonight, I met some old friends and some people I really didn't know who were around then, 1959 and 60. And a couple of them sang Wonderful WIL. And I thought, at long last, the ratings may be edging up just a little. In my mid-80s here, I hope I can be forgiven for Googling some of the things that happened to us in 1960. Just before I got here, there was a big storm in February of 1959. It toppled the 575-foot KTVI TV tower at Hampton, and it ripped roofs off of the arena, wrecked whole blocks. A lot of people died. 21 people died, 345 were injured, and of course the monetary loss was a great deal. So I thought at the time, as they were telling me it was time to go to St. Louis, that it might be a pretty active place. And I came here because there was a massive three-way race for ratings among popular music stations, KWK, KXOK, and the station I went to, WIL. I think the reason they asked me to come was because we did something a little bit different, and it was mostly the staff that put it together at KBOX in Dallas, which was owned by the Balaban stations. Recently acquired WIL. And what we did was, with people like Dan Ingram and Ron Lundy, who I found and brought in, was we played music all the time. You couldn't find a time when a personality talked that there wasn't something going on underneath to buoy things up. We called it the sound of feeling good. And it seemed to work. And it was one of those things, as most of us radio guys, we never were quite sure when the rating book arrived what the ratings would be, because we constantly were doing something different. And if they went up, that was wonderful, and you could stay there. And if they went down, you had a washer and a dryer to disconnect. And that happened to me quite a few times in my career. Happily, here in St. Louis, it did not happen. Actually, the three stations, and this was unusual because in many markets there were two stations competing to play popular music, that is to say, top 40 hits. And those two stations struggled with each other, each trying to get a superior position, of course, to attract commercial advertising. In St. Louis, there were three stations doing that. And so it was really quite a battle. KXOK had been purchased by the man who is widely thought to have invented top 40 radio in the first place. KWK had some personalities who were easily as formidable when it came to comparison with the people we had. And we just had to create an exciting sound and call it something and get it going, and we called it the sound of feeling good. So it worked pretty well. It's hard to cover a lot of history in a short time, so I would like to just tell you one little personal anecdote, which, like a lot of things in radio and television, is very peculiar, unusual, and special, and somehow is part of your personal life. In 1960, we needed a news director badly. And a man walked in without any announcement, carrying a wonderful resume. He was a true journalist. He was not a radio man. He didn't have the radio voice and all of that. I think his name was Herb DeBell. And I interviewed him and was very impressed, and went home that night, and we had something happen in our family which was not very good. My wife at the time, who was pregnant and soon to deliver, contracted tracheitis, which was so serious that she couldn't breathe. We lived in Kirkwood, and no 911, of course. And somehow, with three little boys in the house, I managed to get her into the car and drove as near as I could remember to where Kirkwood Hospital was. And we raced into the emergency room, which was just full of people on a Friday night. And my wife was not doing well at all, and I was absolutely panicked. But someone from way across the room noticed what was going on and took immediate action, and that man's name was Dr. Nelson of Kirkwood. And he got her into the emergency room, and he and I both believed at the time that if she had gotten there any later, it would have been too late. So not to make the story too heavy, because now it gets pretty good. Back in those radio days, we used to try to name our disc jockeys after places that people could recognize or names that they knew. For instance, in St. Louis, we had a Dick Clayton, for instance. That's so that people could recognize the name when the rating service called up and said, "What station are you listening to?" And the person might say, "Well, I'm not really sure." And, "Well, how about, is it by any chance a station with somebody named Clayton on it?" "Oh, yes." And so we played some tricks like that because we were in terrible competition. Well, back to the story of Herb Debelle, the newsman. He was there to be finally interviewed again. And I sat down with him and I said, "Herb, we'd like to have your name be a little bit different so it might be recognizable. We can get the ratings up real good. And it's something that's..." He said, I know, that's what you do." I said, "How would you like to be Nelson Kirkwood?" And he said, "Well, I guess that'd be all right." So Nelson Kirkwood became our news director and went on the air and was in St. Louis for a long, long time. He's passed now. And I believe he was associated with KMOX after a while. And a lot of you may recognize his name. He was here for a long time. The other interesting thing is that I was thinking about Dr. Nelson of Kirkwood. And I told you that my wife was pregnant. She did indeed have a wonderful little boy. And he's back there. His name is Nelson. Thank you very much. And for that applause, it really is the sound of feeling good.
Here, Bob, your Google is up here. Our next inductee is Antonino Lombardo. Lombardo has been at the helm of Il Pensiero. Please excuse me if I should have Pagano reading this one. Il Pensiero, The Thought, the only Italian language newspaper in Missouri and Southern Illinois, and one of the very few in the U.S. since 1967. His bi-monthly newspaper has been the mainstay of St. Louis's Italian-American